You have a lot of different platforms, but they're not connected.
We hit ROAS goals for a brand for years. Then we got fired when the brand realized that the brand was dying.
You're fishing from a shrinking pond. Order takers aren't going to cut it.
Hello. Thanks so much for joining us today for another episode of the Data Driven Marketer Podcast. I am thrilled to be here with Ashleigh Shapiro, VP and Head of Growth at Code3. Today we're going to be talking about fixing the measurement gap, the need to unify Amazon direct-to-consumer digital measurements and investment strategies for real growth. Ashleigh, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. I'm excited too. So to kick off today, I'd love for you to tell us what being VP and Head of Growth at Code3 means and what Code3 is.
Yeah, so Code3 is a full-service digital advertising agency. We were actually started off as Social Code back in 2009 as the very first paid social agency. Meta's, or I guess Facebook at the time's first ads API partner. And today, the reason we're called Code3 is because we have a very holistic offering. Connections, which is our way of referring to, all D2C standard media. Commerce, which is all retail media. And then creative, which is really the connector and driver of performance of it all. What I do at Code3 and kind of what my role looks like is I oversee all of our growth, pretty self-explanatory, I suppose, driving all of our thinking in terms of POVs on certain topics, go-to-market strategies as the ethos and ecosystem of digital continues to evolve, and of course, revenue growth, whatever that means. Yeah.
Great. So if you have a need in the retail media, direct consumer creative space, Ashleigh is the person who you reach out to first.
Yeah, give me a call.
Give her a call. Awesome. So the gap, is there a measurement gap? What's the gap? I mean, you talk about the three in Code3, two of the three are those retail endpoints, direct consumer endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the gap today? What are we fixing?
That is a really good question. So I cannot tell you how many different conversations I've had with advertisers. And all the conversations are regarding the same topic, which is measurement. And there are a lot of measurement woes out there. And I think that is because digital advertising and what drives revenue digitally is very complex. It's multifaceted, and it's got a lot of different platforms who don't love to share their data with one another. And ultimately, that's the root of the issue, right? It's actually quite simple. You have a lot of different platforms that all have impact in what drives your revenue, but they're not connected. So understanding how they all play together is quite difficult. And you also have this instance in which, especially post-pandemic, consumer buy-in towards digital, towards e-commerce is higher than ever. They're purchasing on Amazon, they're purchasing on your D2C, and brand buy-in towards retail media is higher than ever. So they have a healthy amount of revenue coming through from their D2C and a healthy amount of revenue coming through from their Amazon or other retail media networks. Where the breakdown comes in and where this challenge really is prominent is, say you have a platform like Meta and you're trying to understand what is the impact of Meta. Well, if 50% of your revenue comes through from D2C, 50% comes through from Amazon, but your pixel can only be placed on your D2C site, then what you're evaluating as your revenue from Meta is really only half of what it's actually driving. Now, the next question there is, what is it actually driving? And that is the difficult question to answer, right? That is what everybody's trying to get at. And some people don't even know to answer the question, which is one problem. Others who do answer the question don't know how to answer it. But that is the root of the issue. That's where the gap really lives and exists.
It seems like it should be straightforward, right? And I'm saying that knowing, of course, it's not. But to break it down, it's
Yes.
like my Amazon platform says I spent $1 on Amazon sponsored search and it reached someone who bought my product on Amazon. Seems pretty straightforward. My Meta platform has a pixel so it knows who it's serving ads to on Meta and who goes to my site and it buys. And Meta told me that I served ads to 10 people that went to mysite.com and bought, right? But you're
Hmm.
saying that that level of transparency of knowing who you served an ad to and if they bought isn't the full picture.
Correct. Correct. Because what if that individual goes to your D2C site, but then they go and actually complete their purchase on Amazon? And data suggests, and I believe there's a recent data output from eMarketer that says about 50% of individuals who go to your D2C site will also go to an e-tailer like Amazon or one of its competitors to review your brand. And then that is the connector that drops. And if you look at Meta, what Meta is going to say is no conversion, right? But if you are able to connect those dots, what you'll actually realize is they did convert, just not in a platform that you're actively tracking with pixels.
Awesome. Yeah. And like to play a little bit less dumb,
Yeah.
them saying like, what's the big deal? The, the issue is magnified times infinity because how many platforms are we talking about? Not just ad
Hmm.
platforms, but we're talking about, you know, today's complex point of sale landscape and all the options that consumers have. I'd love to ask, like, what
Yes.
do you think the audience duplication is between Amazon and Walmart? Like, it's not a real question. It's like very, very high for many
Yeah.
categories, right? Like most
Hmm.
people who walk into a Walmart or go to walmart.com at some point over the course of a month and certainly a year are also going to Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And the problem there is if you serve someone an ad through Amazon, either that ad is on Amazon or now because of retail media, you could serve ads with Amazon off of Amazon. And that
Yep.
person is influenced by that ad, but then walks into a Walmart and buys, you lose all visibility into that attribution, right?
Hmm.
Same
Yep.
thing. I'm like, what's the duplication between Instagram and TikTok, right? Like, you serve an ad in one place and that person goes to Amazon to buy, you lose that. And like, did Amazon drive it or did TikTok drive it? And what's everything, how's it all working together, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And that is the key of it, right? That is the difficult question to answer. And oftentimes we try to categorize, okay, I have this demand gen channel, I have Meta, I have let's call it TikTok, wherever you're Pinterest, wherever you're investing, connected TV. And you might in your mind have a sense of, I want this to drive in-store traffic, or I want this to go to D2C, or I want this to go to Amazon. But when you sell in all three of those places, you can't really control that. The choice is up to the consumer, and they're going to purchase wherever they want to purchase, regardless of what your intent was.
Right.
As long as there's the option, they probably will purchase in a place that you didn't necessarily expect. And understanding the true value of your media mix then gets really complex and difficult, unless you have a measurement tool.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. And then when we add brick and mortar and like real life, not digital, it gets even more complex, right? And many
Hmm.
brands, you know, online sales point represents a fraction, sometimes a large fraction, but still a fraction of their overall sales. And so those digital measurements don't even work in the world of brick and mortar. So um,
100%.
I won't make you explain to us why this exists. We know about walled gardens at this point, and
Yep.
right, Amazon keeps their data private, and Google doesn't see what Meta's serving, and vice versa. But do talk to me a little bit about the implications of this before we get into the solutions, right? Like if you are a brand marketer reporting to a CFO of how marketing is working, what blind spots does this create? What are the challenges for the marketer?
Great question. So I will tell you the number one issue I see with brands. And I can almost guarantee you. So I'll take you back to kind of what I see come up with most brands today's age, who are struggling. Let's say their performance is stagnated. Usually, if you're growing, you kind of already intuitively figure this out. But for those that have seen stagnating performance, there's one of three things going on in every single one of those instances. First one is you're overly invested in the bottom of the funnel. Second one is you are overly reliant on ROAS and ROAS only as your source of truth. The third one is you have no understanding or measurement of incrementality or MMM. And It's usually a blending of all three, I'll be honest with you, but I'll give you a real life example of how this plays out. And so there's a lot of brands, we're speaking with where they're coming to us because their performance is stagnated. And their performance is stagnated because 80% plus of their spend is invested in the very bottom of the funnel, demand capture channels like search on Amazon or Google search. And when we ask them, why aren't you growing into something like Meta? The answer is, well, the ROAS is really low. The return we're getting there is incredibly low, and the ROAS is so strong on search. And so that is coming up quite frequently, right? And there's a specific client, I won't say their name, I will keep them private, but there's a specific client we work with who had this exact scenario. And one of the challenges they were facing is, well, we don't want to scale demand generation. We don't want to scale Meta because look at um, the ROAS on Meta. And when you looked at their media mix, 70% of their revenue came from Amazon. Only 30% of their revenue came from their D2C site. And so what they were evaluating was Meta and how it was impacting their D2C site. And that was really their source of truth. So we did an interesting test with them where when we would start to decrease Meta spend, their Amazon performance would go down. And we were basically drawing the connection for them that just because you're sending every single consumer to your D2C site with your meta ads does not mean that's where they will purchase. Demand generation is demand generation for all demand capture. And so that's a real example where they were stuck in this loop where they were fishing from a shrinking pond because they wouldn't scale their demand gen. And it's not because they didn't believe in it, but they were so focused on ROAS and not really understanding that the return on ad spend they were evaluating was only a fraction of the actual revenue Meta was driving. And that's where we started to have to talk to them more and educate them more on incrementality and thinking about the fact that you can't control where consumer purchases. And once we started getting measurement aligned and started to help them evaluate, we were able to increase investment on Meta, and they actually started to seeing a turnaround in that stagnation of growth. That story, that scenario, find, replace the brand name, it happens all the time. And it's just something that people aren't really thinking about. And if they are, it's just not necessarily knowing, okay, what's the solution for it? Because even a lot of Meta's own lift studies, if you do it through the platform, only really measures your D2C or your search. And so you either have to extrapolate that or just throw a dot at the wall and try to guess like what the impact is without a solution.
Right. It's easier to identify the problem. The solution can be elusive, right? I have
Yes.
my own story, similar story. I think everyone on the agency side has a similar story where
Yes.
we we hit ROAS goals for a brand for years. Great relationship, multi-year relationship with the brand, always just crushing ROAS goals. I don't want to toot my own horn. We were at least meeting them and often over. And then we got fired when the brand realized that the brand was dying, right? And so
Yes.
I think that just highlights what you're talking about in terms of answering the question. I put $1 in, and how many dollars did I get back? Is not a sufficient question to answer if the dollars that you're getting back were not incrementally and causally driven by media,
Yes.
right? And I
Hmm.
think that you spoke to another challenge also, which is that marketers aren't, despite that kind of inflationary metric of ROAS,
Yeah.
marketers aren't equipped to actually champion or advocate for their contribution to the business, especially when the real contribution of Meta isn't just impacting sales on direct to consumer, right? It's impacting sales on
Hmm.
Amazon throughout retail media that aren't being captured by that Facebook pixel or reported in the Facebook dashboard, and certainly not capturing that in-store sales as well, right? How do you see like those limitations playing out when marketers don't understand the full aperture of what they're trying to drive?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a really good question. I think you hit on a point in what you were saying that really resonated with me. And I'll kind of break it down. There's a couple ways that I see this play out. One, think of the team structure. So you have your Amazon team and then you have your D2C team. They sit separately. And oftentimes, this starting to change,
Mhm.
oftentimes they don't communicate. Think of their agencies. They have
Mhm.
an Amazon agency, they have a D2C agency. They don't communicate. And it goes back to something we intuitively know. There used to be a time back when you and I first started in this industry where you had this mentality of jack of all trades is a master of none. You should have a search agency, you should have a social agency. And then what you realized is, oh man, you really need to blend these together so you're actually
Mhm.
allocating your budgets appropriately. So I think in this sense, this is the next consolidation that needs to happen is when you're sitting on Amazon and you're thinking about what is my performance, and if you're not thinking about what's happening on Meta or what are my budgets in connected TV, then you're missing a huge portion of what drives performance on Amazon. The consumer's decision to purchase from you doesn't start and stop on Amazon.
Right.
They're going to discover you somewhere. And ideally, that somewhere is going to be somewhere on their social feed, especially if you're a brand that really relies on your brand prominence. So there's that piece. But the other piece I think you hit on, which is really interesting, is how they advocate for themselves internally. I think intuitively, some individuals get this, but when you have to sit in front of your CFO and justify why you need additional budget when your meta ROAS looks like it's a 2 and you need a
Mhm.
5 or whatever that is, that can be a daunting task. You need to make the case, you're not entirely sure how, and justifying it can be difficult. And I think without the appropriate resources and partner, you get a little stuck there. You might want to make the case, but not have the appropriate data or resources to actually back said case.
Yeah, totally. When we talk to Amazon teams and Amazon channel managers on the brand
Mm-hmm.
side, almost universally they tell me that their organization thinks that they want budget to drive sales on Amazon because that's what they're goaled on. And sure, they want to drive Amazon sales, but what they really want to prove to their organization is that they are not being self interested. That when you invest in Amazon, not only do Amazon sales go up, but there is a halo effect and all sales
Mm-hmm.
channels go up. And these
Yeah.
Amazon brand managers know that their key to winning budget and glory is not proving that they're driving Amazon sales. Their key to success within their organization is showing how they're benefiting everyone else. So if only
Yeah.
that was an easy thing to do, right?
Totally. Interesting supporting fact for that is Code3 is the top driver of, at least within the peer set that we are kind of compared to within the Amazon ethos. We are the top driver of third party investment. And what that means is investing off Amazon through the Amazon DSP. And the reason for that is we recognize and we're able to measure what is the impact when you go to a connected TV through the Amazon DSP on your Amazon investment. And if you're only living within Amazon, remember Amazon is inherently demand capture channel. And that's where consumers are doing product research, but the awareness doesn't necessarily happen there. It happens outside of that. And so I think even Amazon is recognizing, oh wow, we really need to incentivize and prioritize. And they said that this is a huge priority for them this year is that off-platform investment because ultimately it'll fuel Amazon. So even the platforms recognize that there's this connector. Now, does that mean Amazon's going to let you pixel their page and really truly understand the value of off-platform? No, I mean, you can argue there's Amazon attribution with Meta, but no consumer will click on a Meta ad and convert on that first time. And if they don't do that, you lose the attribution. So it's flawed in its own way as well.
That doesn't mean that marketing's not working. It's actually like that's
Exactly.
how marketing's supposed to work, right?
Hmm.
So let's talk about another real world example here because you and I have worked on a brand together where the brand's goal is to grow their Amazon business by X%. This is a brand
Yep.
that's sold heavily at retail. They have a large direct to consumer presence and they're growing on Amazon. And the question that I know they brought to Code3 was how do we grow this Amazon thing, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, how did the team go about reframing that question and what were some of the opportunities that were pointed out in accomplishing that goal?
I think so. There's that example, and there's a couple we've worked on together, and there's one in particular. I'm sorry if this is not the direction you wanted to go, but this stood out to me, and I can't not
Yeah.
bring it up. One of the brands we partner on, if this is the one you're referring to, they were asking, how do we grow Amazon?
Mhm.
And when we evaluated them using Keen and started to understand what is the incrementality, what we realized is, well, it's by not spending on Amazon. It's actually by spending elsewhere because you've hit a little bit of a diminishing return. And if you really want to drive incremental impact, it's elsewhere that you're going to move the needle for you. And they didn't necessarily want to hear that. And
Mhm.
they decided to disregard and continue to invest on Amazon. But that is where ROAS gets you in trouble. Because while it is an excellent correlation metric, it is not always causation. And that's where incrementality is truly so critical in understanding the value of your media mix.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could just add some color from our perspective on that, because that
Mhm.
was the exact one that I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Okay, perfect.
they were just making up numbers. They were a $10 million brand on Amazon. They wanted to become a $20 million brand, right? And they're like,
Hmm.
how much more do we need to spend on Amazon sponsored search and Amazon on platform display and the rest of the suite of the Amazon ad products for us to grow our Amazon business? They were
Yeah.
spending a lot. And the
Uh-huh.
answer is like, you're juicing that fruit, brands, like you're squeezing that juice, right? And like you keep squeezing, but the juice is running out from those products.
Hmm.
You need to drive your overall marketplace presence. And part of what your team helped illuminate was that, to adequately answer that question, we can't just look at your on platform Amazon spend, because guess what? Meta ads drive sales on Amazon too, regardless of that
Yes.
if that attribution is in the Meta ad platform. You're serving millions of impressions. Of course, you are influencing consumer behavior amongst consumers who are choosing to shop on Amazon. Your
Hmm.
Google spend, your TV spend drive sales on Amazon. So for us to actually get an adequate understanding of how to grow your Amazon business, we have to look at your investment on Amazon, of course, but we also have to look at how those non Amazon tactics influence Amazon sales too.
Yes.
There,
Yeah.
the cherry on top was, by the way, you're also not going to grow your Amazon business in isolation, because guess what? Shoppers, consumers are humans and they have choice and preferences. And so
Hmm.
the right question, and this is Code3 driven, but the right question to ask is, how do we have to grow our overall business with a focus on Amazon, but how do we have to grow all of our sales touch points so that the Amazon business grows to the point that we want it to grow? Because
Yeah.
again, because of consumer choice, you can't force consumers to shop on Amazon and not on your direct consumer site.
Oh, totally. There's another brand we work with, or we work on together, where they tried to take the choice from the consumer. When we first started working with them, they were struggling to really scale year over year, and they tried to just segment their traffic. Okay, 20% to Amazon, 20% to Walmart, 20% to D2C, 20% to whatever retailer, Target. And the biggest thing that we had to tell them is stop that. Because what if, how do you know if this consumer likes Walmart? Unless you're buying an audience intended for Walmart, which they were not, you had no way of knowing. And so you're just running the risk of sending a consumer to a store that they don't purchase from, that they don't prefer. If they're a Target customer and you send them to Walmart, they're going to bounce. And so it just goes back to exactly the point you're making, which is you have to let the consumer decide. You have to make it as easy as possible for them to decide by, using various tools to give them options about where they can go check out, whether it's your D2C, Amazon, Target, Walmart. But ultimately, the choice is in their hands. And it's very difficult to predict unless you really invest in audiences, which can be cost prohibitive for some brands.
Totally, totally. Um, you know, by the way, it is pretty common that sometimes when faced with the truth of like, or a view of incrementality,
Mm-hmm.
that suggests that the right way to accomplish your goal isn't necessarily the way that you were thinking about it. When I say you, I mean brands.
Yeah.
It's common for brands to say, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to do what we wanted to do. And what I
Mm-hmm.
would suggest is that in that case, the forecast is your friend, because we should, the right thing to do in that case is to say, okay, let's model what you're going to do and let's forecast it.
Yes.
And the forecast said, you know what, you're not going to accomplish the goal, right? In fact, you're going to end up specifically here. And then after a
Yes.
quarter, when the forecast is right and they aren't working towards their goals, the forecast again is your friends, because they can say, okay, you were right about that. Let's see what the model actually does say we should do. And you
Mm-hmm.
start to win confidence in increments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, the other part of your job as VP head of growth, I know your official unofficial mandate is get shit done. I don't know if I'm
Yes.
allowed to say those words on air, so stay tuned, audience. This is just getting exciting. We're breaking rules. Let's talk about change. What does change look
Yeah.
like? Because now, okay, great, we have some tools rooted in incrementality to help us show how all these things are working together and to overcome the challenges. How do you partner with brands? Let's start with brands. Maybe we'll cover the agency also, but how do you work with
Yeah.
brands to start implementing some of this change?
It starts with acknowledging that change is hard.
Hmm.
It is. And even if someone is hungry and willing to change, they say they want it, it still doesn't make it necessarily easier for them because it's an intuitively different way. It's just inherently a different way of thinking. Um, and so when it's whether it's internally or externally, I could go on for days about change management, but I'll give you the compressed version. It's First of all, it's explaining why it matters. It goes back to the 101 of making the business case. Why does this matter? And what does it do for you? So if I am a marketer and I'm helping my point of contact implement change, let's say I'm telling them, hey, look, the reason you're stagnating, the reason why your brand is declining is because all of your investment is on search and no one's going to find you unless they're searching for you. And oh, by the way, the percentage of consumers who are actually searching on Google is declining consistently year on year on year. So you're fishing from a shrinking pond essentially, and your brand is disintegrating. Um, so they know that. They're like, yes, I know. But the change that you have to help them with is how do they talk about themselves? How do they talk about what they do? How do they facilitate change within their organization of how they're held in terms of KPIs and how they're evaluated in terms of KPIs? So, really, what you're doing and what we have to do is not communicate effectively to our point of contact because they get it. It is helping them facilitate change management at their organization and helping them have the right tools and talk tracks and data and essentially slides, what have you, to be able to go to their CFO and say, yeah, I know this ROAS looks like this on Meta, but that's actually the wrong metric. We should be looking at incrementality and we should flip the way we're investing on its head because we're going to continue to decline if we don't do that. And so it's really helping them educate. And that means they need to go to the CFO and say, here's why this matters for you. This is what this means. This is the so what. And be able to speak to that in a confident, ongoing way. Same thing happens internally here. Whenever we're facilitating change, I mean, there's one constant in this industry and it's change. But anytime we have to create and build buy-in towards change, it's always whether I'm talking to the CFO, whether I'm talking to a junior employee, whether I'm talking to a peer, it's here's what this does for you. This is why this matters. And this is why you should care about it. And this is the end result that it could help create. Um, and yeah, it's all kind of rooted in that. But I think it's even more challenging when you're working with brands because you have to arm them with those skills internally and help educate them on those things. Otherwise, you're going to keep hitting that wall of them saying, I know, I get it, but this is the goal I'm given.
Yeah.
And you have to just realize you can't stop there. You have to push past it and really help them make the case.
Given Code3's expertise, like you were saying, direct to consumer and retail. Do you
Yeah,
find that brands are coming to you that want an agency to execute on what the brand wants, and or are brands looking for agency partners to push them and help facilitate that change?
I think brands are exhausted by having agencies who are just order takers. I will tell you, we vet in every single pitch presentation. If we disagree with you, we will tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I will never forget we had a brand where their entire RFP was around linear. And they were saying, hey, we need an agency to help us buy linear. This is what we require. This is the budget, etc. We just want to know the media plan. And we came in and said, actually, after doing our analysis, you should not do linear. Like, this is a bad place for you to be. It doesn't make sense. Look at all the money you're wasting. Look at all of this. You should do connected TV.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a risk there, but we honestly felt there's no agency that would be successful with this because it's inherently the wrong channel for you
Right.
based off of your audience set. They picked us. We won it because they said, we're so excited that you challenged us. This is what we needed. Hit an all-time high in performance later that year, and they had been steadily declining. And so it just is justification that that's what brands are craving. I think it's a difficult market. It's a difficult macroeconomic climate,
Mm-hmm.
and order takers aren't going to cut it. Like, you really need to push people outside of their comfort zone, because a lot of their comfort zone is the exact reason why they're stuck in the place that they're stuck.
Yeah.
So we definitely lean into that. We will disagree. We will, respectfully, of
Right.
course, but you're not paying us to take orders. You're paying us to be strategic leaders and help you figure out how to get to where you want to go, even if, as you said earlier, which I love, even if it's not the path that you thought. Even if you thought path was over here and it's actually over here, we'll tell you that. And then same thing for us in change management, we'll make the case.
Awesome. Well, I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall in the room when you were telling that client that no, you shouldn't keep squeezing that juice on your Amazon spend. You're going to do it anyway,
Yes.
but you have our POV, and we'll be here for
Yep.
you when you're ready to pivot, right? So,
Totally,
yeah.
100%. And sometimes it's multiple conversations. That's the other thing about
Yeah.
change management. Even though people say they want it, sometimes it takes some convincing.
Well, for listeners who have made it to this end point of our conversation, I do want to highlight that we have a great case study that we are willing to send a full report on if you reach out, that highlights exactly some of what Ashleigh was talking about in terms of the detriment of being overinvested at the bottom of the funnel. It shows that overall the brand's revenue wasn't suffering immediately, but what was happening was that media was working harder and harder to maintain flat revenue, which meant that ROAS looked great because more revenue was coming in attributed to media, but the base of the business was declining. And by the time the
Mhm.
brand had realized that they had a problem, their cost per acquisition was skyrocketing, the profitability of their investments were declining, and it was going to be an increasingly expensive problem for them to reconcile. But there is a happy ending to the story when some of that change management was executed and they started investing in building their brand across all retail and direct consumer touchpoints. So reach out for the case study. Ashleigh, thank you for doing this with us,
Thank you.
and Karen for your expertise.
Thanks, Jesse. It's a pleasure.